Hello YouTube. So today a special video, a type of video that I hope I'm going to make a ton on this channel. It's a response video. Now, something I don't want this channel to become is a call-out channel. I never want it to become a drama-fueled source of information. I think it's worthless. I think the fitness community is already plagued by it. I don't want to participate in that. But if I can engage in intelligent discussion with someone, I will always do it. And in this case, we actually have something quite interesting on our hands. So, what happened is, there was a video by a bodybuilder who's quite well known, whose name is Ryan Huston, and he made a video about good chest exercises. And one of them was rings. And if you watch my channel, you will know that I'm doing a ton of ring work. And the reason why I'm doing ring work is because I feel like it's a good horizontal press for additional volume for my chest. And what happened is that the comment that I posted got a lot of traction, which tends to happen because if you're on this channel, most likely you saw one of my comments somewhere. And a guy answered and basically said straight up that rings, he didn't say it was worthless, but he basically said just bench press. And so we got into a little scuffle, which, you know, it's YouTube, so that's what you do. But when I do that with people, I always try and remain cautious. In that case, I wasn't so nice. And the reason why, and it's an interesting fact, is that I took him for a troll at first. And he's watching that video, so I'm going to also talk to you directly. I thought you were an American teenager, because your profile pic and your name spoke to me like someone who would be in that age range and from that demographic. And I knew, in a part of my mind, I also knew there was a chance you were going to be Eastern European. I'm going to explain why. No offense. Eastern Europeans are very direct. Men are straightforward. And they're straightforward when you know them, and they're straightforward with the way they communicate on the internet too. So it's tough to distinguish between someone who's being inflammatory on purpose, so a troll, or someone who's just being straightforward. And because of the information I had available, I thought you were the first one, so I fired back. I shouldn't have, because now that I watch your video, I know who you are. And you don't strike me as someone who's a troll. And I think your video was good. I linked the video in the description. It's 15 minutes long, it's a bit long, but put it in the background. The guy's voice is nice to listen to, and he doesn't ramble. So you don't have to watch his video because I'm going to recap his points. That being said, I would really appreciate it if you would click on it and give him a like and a comment saying something about the video. Please do not dislike his video. Please do not leave stupid comments, because he was respectful in his answer. So we want to encourage dialogue on this platform. We want to have more of these videos coming, and if we behave like jerks, it's not gonna happen. So let's get on the video. What was my comment? My comment was, ring push-ups are a great addition for hypertrophy. That's basically the gist of my comment. And I did say, for me, it was a must-do exercise, which is true. And I also want to say, you're on this channel, so you should already know, and that I don't think you said your name, but you basically already said in your video, and yes, you were right, I only care about hypertrophy. So I'm not going to talk about strength. I don't care about strength, it's not my thing. I care about size and looks. And so, to go back to my first point of what my argument was, my argument didn't really mention the bench in the first place. There was no mention of the bench press in my argument. It was that it was a good exercise, period. I never said it was the best, but I did say it was good. Sorry about that. If it's my first video you watch, you're going to notice I have to get up a lot. So let's go step by step. First off, let me say that to introduce to people who are not familiar with the topic or who won't watch his video, the disagreement we have is that he basically told me, and I keep saying I'm not saying your name because I don't think you said it in the video. I'm very sorry about that. I'm not trying to be flippant. Just as you don't know my name, I don't know yours. He said that just doing bench press was fine for chest, and my argument was that you needed more accessories and variations. His point was more nuanced than that though, so we're going to go over that, but I'm just painting you the broad picture here. First off, let me start to saying that we don't really disagree, and he noticed that too. We don't disagree in that the bench is the best horizontal press you can do. And I'm going to explain here why. Because on a risk to reward ratio, the bench strikes a very nice balance. Meaning that, for example, weighted dips are extremely good for chest hypertrophy and strength. You could even argue that they are better. Because the stretch reflex you get from the dips is much stronger because there is nothing to catch you. It's basically the difference between a box squat and a squat. It's the same between a dips and a bench press. When you bench, when you get to the end of the stretch reflex, the bar touches your chest, which helps you propel the bar up, unless you do a spoto press, which is not what we're talking about here. With a dip, there's nothing to catch you, there's nothing to bounce your chest against, so you have to catch all of the energy, the kinetic energy that's bringing you down, to push yourself back up. So in my opinion, the dips is going to stress the pectorals much more than the bench. But the reason why I would never tell people to do dips over bench for horizontal presses is because, one, certain people cannot do dips safely. Two, dips are more dangerous. There's a higher chance of shoulder injury in the dip. And three, the progression is less doable because you have to strap weight to your belt and it can become cumbersome. And that's what you stated in your video too. It's much more easier with the bench because you're going to have enough plates on the bench to reach 700 pounds, which you will never reach. So your progression is going to be steady. And bench is also superior to push-ups and ring push-ups because they are body weight, you don't really know how much weight you're using, and putting more weight like with a weight vest or plates on your back is annoying. So overall, the best horizontal press I would recommend for size is the bench. Now we're going to get into subtleties. So first, let's talk about me and my ring abilities. You said in your video that you didn't know what I was capable of. I'm capable of very little on rings. I'm a heavy dude, I'm not particularly good at it. I certainly cannot do planche push-ups. I cannot do iron cross or anything. But I think it's not necessary, meaning that and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your argument was that if you can do very advanced chest variations on the rings, then you're going to have a big chest. I think you don't have to go that route, and I'm going to go back to that because it's your mentality throughout the thing, and I think it's wrong. Even if you're a beginner, you can get good gains from entry-level movements. You don't have to be super advanced. And that's why I get a ton of results from push-ups on the ring. I'm not doing anything advanced. I'm going to introduce the reason why later. I want to state that what you say about the weight used is perfectly right. The issue with push-ups is that you don't know what weight you're using. You don't know how much of your leg contact with the floor is actually helping. The angle of the push-up changes everything. And loading it is not something I would recommend. Weighted push-ups, I think, are more risk than reward. And they're just tough to put in place. It's much easier to bench. But as we'll see later, it doesn't mean you don't have to do push-ups. Because in a way, and you can disagree if you want to, but bench is the same. For someone like me who wants hypertrophy, when I bench, I don't know how much weight I use with my chest. You don't know that. Depending on the individual, with the grip you use, with the amount of arch you have in your back, you might use more or less chest. You might use more front delts. You might use more triceps. So it's going to be completely random too. If you put 225 on the bar, you're not pushing 225 with your chest. There are other muscles who are going to interfere with that. So I think that argument doesn't hold a lot of salt. That being said, I will 100% agree that you will use your chest more And you will rather know how much weight goes to your chest on the bench more than you do on the push-ups, but the level of muscle activation on the chest between both lifts, I don't think you can argue that bench press uses more chest. You can use more weight with it, so technically it's going to be more tonnage moved by your chest. I won't agree against that, but saying that the bench is going to provide more chest activation overall, I think is incorrect. 4, and it's something you didn't really mention, and I think is very important in our argument, is the range of motion. The bench is a full range of motion movement because you touch your chest and you lock out the elbows. But that's an arbitrary range of motion that is set by your body structure. Someone who has a massive gut is going to have less range of motion than me. Which means what? Which means that you can always get more range of motion. And you said that with the camber bar, that has you go deeper. And as you mentioned, the camber bar has a higher chance of injury. Why? Because it stretches the pectoral more, puts the shoulder in a compromised position. Now, what would be a lift that would allow you much more shoulder flexion with a deeper movement of the elbow and more chest activation without the risk of snapping your shoulder? Ring push-ups. You sort of said at some point that you hoped I touch my nose or something on the push-ups. I do when I do normal push-ups, but with ring push-ups, they're supposed to be elevated. So you can go as deep as you want. And of course, you have to be reasonable. You don't want to be too deep, but you can go much deeper than you could on the bench, because on the bench, you're going to go here and that's it. The bar is stopped. You're not going to pull the bar through your body. So this is the amount of shoulder flexion and elbow travel you're gonna get. I get much deeper than that when I do ring push-ups. My elbow is way deep and my chest is much more stretched. So I think it's something that we need to keep in mind because it's important later on for the argument. You say very correctly, there are no must-do exercises. Agree 100%, there are no must-do exercises. But in a way you contradict yourself, because then you present the bench as that king of all lifts, so it's a must-do. If something is strikingly better than the rest, it's a must-do. So I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm saying that you didn't present your argument in a way that wouldn't allow me to point that fact out. I'm attacking you on form, it's completely irrelevant. I just wanted to let you know that the way you structured your argument didn't work in your favor here. But it's not important because I know what you were talking about. And you say bench is better. Agree, the bench is better. But, and that's my issue with your way of thinking, just because something is better doesn't mean that it's the only thing you need to do, or that it's the only thing you should do. And we're gonna get to that. The issue I have with your mentality of saying, just do more bench. Why do ring push-ups? Just do more bench. Well, it's because most people can't. If you want to maximize chest growth, you're going to want to hit your chest every 48 hours, or at least 3 times a week. Some people cannot do that. I certainly cannot do that. High frequency row bench smokes my shoulders. And then it also affects my ability to do vertical press and even to squat, because it puts so much pressure on the shoulder that then every movement with shoulder flexion becomes a pain. And that is, across the line, something that is very true for every single lifter. You might be an exception if you can do bench 10 by 10, tons of volume with heavy weight, tons of frequency all the time, and you're fine. Great for you, but understand that you're an outlier. It's not the majority of people. It's certainly not the type of people I've worked with or trained with. And if you look at powerlifters, the #1 type of injury that they have when they retire is shoulder injury. And that's with people who bench with good form because they were powerlifters. And you might say, well, it's because they push their limits. Yes, they do, but then look at gym bros or even gym rats. What type of injury or what type of ailments do they suffer from when they retire from lifting? It's always shoulder. They always have either issues with their shoulder, their lower back, but the shoulder one is 100% preventable. And it's caused in my opinion, from what I've experienced, by a ton of horizontal pressing, because horizontal pressing, even if you do it properly, even if you do it with an arch, even if you do it with your shoulders tucked back, it puts stress on the AC joint and the rotator cuff, especially the bench press, which is also why just do more bench is not an argument that is interesting for most people to hear, because if they could, they would. If I could bench more, I would bench more, but I can't. And I want maximal chest gains, so I'm not going to allow myself to get injured. And the issue I have with this too is that you also let people know that it's going to wield maximal gains. Well, I have to disagree with that, and I'm going to let you why. But before that, we're going to talk about carryover, something that I agree with you 100%. Ring push-ups don't carry over to the bench. Normal push-ups don't carry over that much to the bench. When I started benching, I was a machine on push-ups. I was super advanced. And the first time I benched, I think I got 145, something like that. So there was also the issue of me being very lightweight, but still, I've never found that push-ups carry over. I think they're great for size, I think they're great for health, and I'm going to explain why. But I don't think they're going to make you much stronger at bench, because bench provides such a strong stimulus with a lot of weight already that the stimulus you're going to get with the bench is not going to increase your strength a ton. But it's different for hypertrophy, and we'll get to that later. I think you sort of conflate strength and hypertrophy, and they're not the same thing, but I'm going to talk about that later. You say it's just more volume, and I agree. Doing ring push-ups is just more horizontal pressing volume. And your mentality in this is, what's the point? And if you're thinking about tonnage, yes, you can do more tonnage on the bench faster, but can you do it safer? Can you do it more frequently? Can you do it during a long period of time? Can you do it consistently? I think that you can't. And doing push-ups is not going to tax you. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to get as much tonnage from my chest. I might get a different type of stretch, and I'm going to be safer doing it. Of course, if you can stay on the same level as me when it comes to volume with only bench, you should do it. But my point is that most people can't. And then you say something that I just don't agree with. And that's why you lost me, but I'm not surprised, because it's an argument I hear a ton. Is you use the argument that chin-ups are best for biceps. And you relate that to the bench because it's best for chest. And you use those arguments because they're weighted exercises that you can put a lot of weight on. You didn't mention curls, but you basically said chin-ups are best for biceps because you move a lot of weight. And it's going back to my first argument, where compound movements cannot accurately help you predict how much weight you put on a muscle. And the argument I have for that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never seen someone with a very strong chin-up who only did chin-ups who had strikingly developed biceps. I'm not going to say you won't put on size, but are you going to get to that level of size that is clearly elite, where you pushed your body? Now, it's time for me to showboat a bit. Please forgive me for that. But it's for the sake of my arguments. Right? I have around 18 inches arms. Most of my arm is this. It's the bicep. I got to 16 inches. I had never done a chin-up in my life. And I'm now 2 inches bigger, and I still don't do weighted chin-ups. I do chin-ups, but I really don't think they do that much for me. And that's something that I spoke about with other athletes, lifters, who got tons of size on their upper back doing chin-ups, and I experienced that too, but they didn't get much for their bicep. And the reason for that is, when you do a chin-up and you're at the bottom, the logic that it stretches the bicep at the bottom and therefore is going to create growth through the stretch is true, but what is really being stretched is your back. That's what's taking most of the blunt. And when you pull and you reverse, your bicep is not really getting engaged until you get to the point where you have to lock out. And then yes, your bicep is fully engaged. And you might pull EMG data against that and tell me that, oh, the studies show that. My issue with those studies is that usually they pick noobs, and of course a compound movement is going to put more mass on straight away right off the bat than isolation because you can load more weight. But on the long run, when it comes to specific body parts, isolations are going to be king. And it might not hold true for certain muscles, but I think that trying to equate chin-ups and bench was not in your best advantage, because between what works best, bench for chest or chin-ups for biceps, I think bench works much better for chest than chin-ups. And maybe you're going to contradict that and you're going to have 20 inches arms doing only chin-ups. I don't know. Let's see. Then you talk about the squeeze. And you say it's a buzzword. I agree, in a sense. This industry is full of buzzwords. Mind-muscle connection is the same. It's all buzzwords, like contraction, eccentric, concentric, it's all buzzwords. When I say squeeze, it's that contraction at the top. If I say stretch, you know that it's during the negative, or that it's isometric at the bottom of the negative. We're just using different lingos. I don't think using the scientific term makes it less of a buzzword. I think using the scientific term is a way to intimidate people into basically making them believe that you have the authority because you know the terms. I know the terms too. I just like the term squeeze and stretch. I think it's easier for people to get. And your argument is that every single lift has squeeze and stretch, and that some of them only have squeeze, but we're going to get after that later. And from what I got in your argument, it felt like you thought it didn't matter, and that a squeeze is a squeeze and a stretch is a stretch. Or a stretch, depending on the type of stretch, can definitely matter. For example, when you are holding a weight and you stretch your traps and you let them stretch down, it's going to create hypertrophy. And the stretch is limited by the mobility of the traps. So in that case, yes, I would argue that the stretch is a stretch, depending on the grip you use. But for the chest, the stretch between a bench press, a close grip bench, a ring push-up, a normal push-up, those stretches change. They pull on the fiber from different angles and at different levels of intensity. So yes, you might be using more weight on the chest and it might experience a stretch in that angle and position that is stronger, but it's not experiencing the same type of lengthening when it comes to the angle used and the type of elbow travel. So that's a different stimulus. Even though it's a stretch on a different plane. And you might say that it doesn't matter, but for bodybuilding, it certainly does. And you say that mind-muscle connection doesn't matter. And I like the example you picked because I'm the same. I squat, I don't feel my quads when I squat and they get bigger from it. But for me at least, there are certain movements that helped me grow because I managed to connect with the muscle. And it's not an isolated case. I'm not the only one. Tons of people are the same, where they experienced a lot of growth once they managed to connect to the muscle. So saying that mind-muscle connection that the squeeze and the stretch can help create is useless, I think is unfair, because it's something that works and helps people, especially for the chest. Tons of people bench and they don't feel their chest, and if you can help them do some stretch, do some bent flies, something where they can squeeze the chest and feel it, they can then activate it better on the bench. You might disagree, but that's my opinion. Just an aparté here. Something I liked about your argument is that it was based around what you think and your opinion. You didn't try and pull scientific data out of your hat. I really like that, so I'm doing the same. I think it's a healthier way to discuss things. But back to that. Now I want to talk about the stretch to risk ratio, because you didn't really touch on that, and we argued, we both agreed on the fact that Olympic ring push-ups aren't dangerous if you're not an idiot. But for me, that encompasses my idea of why certain exercises are good for the stretch they provide, is because they might help you stretch the muscle fibers in a different fashion, not more intensely, but in a different fashion, and still keep everything healthy. And as you said, you could get the same stretch, the deep stretch of the elbow travel forward and the shoulder flexion with a camber bar, but that's also going to put the chest at risk because you're moving more weight. So if you want to do something that stretches the muscle fibers, you should pick an exercise that's going to allow you to do it safely without a chance of the muscle lengthening so much it detaches. 11, I used the term athletic. It was poorly used. For me, I used the term in the context of bodybuilding. What is athletic in bodybuilding? Well, for me, it's the ability to move your body through space. That's it. A squat is not athletic. A pistol squat is athletic. A bench press is not athletic. A push-up is athletic. Why? You're moving your body through space. You're doing calisthenics. Of course, athleticism in itself is more the ability to sprint, jump high, etc. So I'm not disagreeing with that. If you want to be athletic, you shouldn't even think about it, because if you're a bodybuilder, why are you trying to be athletic in the first place? You're not an athlete. So that's why I said that in that context, is because within the realm of bodybuilding, there are certain exercises that are still good for growth and are going to allow you to branch out of just lifting weights, which for me, I think is beneficial. I used to be the heavy guy who was strong at compounds. Now I want to be someone who can move around a bit better. But that's, again, it's my own bias. And we're getting to a point that's very important. You're asking me, why are Olympic rings healthier? Because I did say that they make your shoulders, wrist, and elbow healthier. Super important. Bench press, as I said, horizontal presses put stress on the AC joint and on the rotator cuff. Depending on the individual, the stress can be lessened or heightened, but it's always there. In certain individuals, it's going to create shoulder impingement and can create serious injuries of the shoulder girdle. Why are Olympic rings any healthier then? One, because you use your body weight, meaning that there is, as you said, less intensity, less weight put on the muscles, so it's easier to focus on the sensation, and it's also easier to focus on the form. Another thing that rings allow you to do is that you can manipulate your joints using the ring. You cannot do that with a bar. If I'm here with the bar, I can rotate my wrists to a certain angle. I can do a bulldog press, but I can't do that. Or if the bar comes here, I can't do that. You know, I'm with the bar. I'm locked in with the bar. When you have rings, the rings move around. So as you do the movement, you can move your body around. And you said that external rotation is good for the shoulder. Well, guess what? You can do external rotation doing ring push-ups. You go down and you open up the chest and you squeeze the traps. That's how I do my push-ups. You're not going to get the same level of external rotation that you get on a face pull, but you're certainly not going to get internal rotation from doing ring push-ups. So it's going to open up the chest. It's going to use more of the back of the shoulder and the upper traps, and it's going to overall be healthier. And I think that's also the reason why Olympic rings can be a good replacement or accessory for push-ups, because push-ups are the same as bench press. You're in with the floor. Once you're in and you're doing the rep, you can't really move the wrist around. It's tougher to move the elbow angle also and the shoulder. So it might also participate in inflammation and poor positioning within the exercise. This is why, because this is also why I said that it's nice to complete the bench press with the Olympic rings. Bench presses might teach you bad habits. It might fix your body on a plane that is not healthy for it. And you're going to grind the reps in that position. And you're going to end up so used to your form, because you have to focus on the weight you move, that it's going to slowly chip away at your ability to stay mobile. And instead of doing all sorts of stretches that I see guys doing with the bar for the chest, just do a set, like 5 sets of Olympic ring push-ups at the end of your workout. Go nice and deep, play around with your elbow angle, and try to do something that is a bit challenging that you usually don't do with the bench. That's why I said it's healthier. And then we're talking about Pendlay rows and negatives. And you told me, do I think that Pendlay rows are bad for strength and hypertrophy? No, I think they're good, but I think they're lacking in the stretch. Because if you do them proper, you're going to let the bar just fall. And yes, there is a stretch, but you don't catch the weight. And that's where most of the stretch reflex and the lengthening of the muscle comes from. It's the same mentality when it comes to certain lifts that only have a positive. That's why people say that deadlifts are not that good for hypertrophy, because you only do the positive. If you then dump the bar, there was no negative in the movement. And if you ask me, between a Pendlay row and a cone row where you catch the weight and you might use more posterior chain and you let the upper back lengthen, I'm sort of basically turning your argument against yourself, because the more weight you can move on the cone row, the bigger you're going to get, and you can move much more weight on the cone row that you can do on the Pendlay. And your argument was that because bench allows for more progression and more weight on the bar, then it's better. So what do you do here? It's the same argument. There is a stretch reflex on one lift and you can do more weight. Here there is no stretch reflex and you do less weight. So which is it? Because for me at least, ring push-ups both have the negative and positive. They don't only have the positive. And that's the reason why, and we're getting to that point, I said I didn't understand your point. Because you were repeating something that I just said and I was wondering what was going on. Because you were basically saying, you were basically proving my point. So I didn't understand what we're even talking about. And that's when I told you about the English not being your first language. I understand 100%. English is, for me, technically, when it comes to native language, it's my third language. When it comes to languages I'm very proficient as, is also my third language. And I think we're similar in that, where I speak 4 languages, I think you speak 4 languages too. I think you're European too, so I'm not surprised. I like your accent, by the way. We're brothers in accents. Yours is pretty cool. So that's, sorry about that if it sounded like I was being a jerk. You might have thought I was American too. I'm not. English is not my first language, so I understand. And then just to finish up, for something that, again, I don't want you to misunderstand, I talked about IT abilities because you asked me to Skype. The reason why I won't Skype with you or anyone is because I work with IT. I work with technology. I know enough about that to know that it's very easy to get the IP and information and a ton of data just from Skyping someone. It's not hard at all. And then you can get doxxed. I don't want to get doxxed. It's the reason why I protect my identity. And it's the reason why I told you no, because I didn't know what you were capable of. I know what I can do with my very little knowledge of informatics. So I don't know what you would be able to do with that. So that's why I said, no, let's do a video response, and this is what we're doing. I wasn't saying that you were not going to be able to run a Skype call, if that's what you understood. So that's that. If you do a second video responding to my points, I'm going to put my points in the description under your video, and so that you can answer with the exact points so that it makes it easier for us to communicate. I want to say that I really enjoyed your video. I think you have a lot of things to share. I don't know your level, I don't know your strength, I don't know your physique, but I really encourage you to put more videos on your channel, whether it's responding to me or not, because we need more people to speak, and I don't know if you're natural, but I would be very happy to discuss with you more, to do more of that type of videos. I think it's great. It propagates knowledge, which is what we need. And now that I know you're Eastern European, I also know that nothing of the argument was personal. We were just riffing. It was fun. So if you see any video on my channel that you want to respond to, please do it. Please respond to that video if you want to. And please make your own content, because personally, I will be watching you. and you struck me as someone who has things to say. So thank you for that. Thank you for the video. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to your video. I hope you liked this one. Let me know in the comments what's up. And if you do another video, we can continue the discussion. Have a very good day. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm sorry if you're not Russian. Spatsiba. And if that's not that, please teach me in your language how to say thank you. And I will teach you in mine. But have a very good day. Have a good night. Anyone who watched that video, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you very soon.